Iran has done it, made it official, declared a war on Israel, firing ballistic missiles, supersonic missiles this time, remember, that have landed in Israel, even though most of it has been intercepted by the sophisticated dome system. But what is the latest? Why is Iran and Israel's statements very different, literally contrary to each other? Let me tell you about what are we getting as the latest information. Iranian media released a footage. They are saying that the launching of the missiles toward Israel, that has been confirmed. And these are ballistic missiles in retaliation to Israel's campaign against Hezbollah allies, and that a sharp response that have come in on this. According to Israel, about 180 missiles at least were launched into Israel, and their defenses also have been activated to intercept. But it was this viral footage that caught everyone's attention. Look at this. Missiles seen hitting the ground, and these are some of the air bases in Israel. Iranian attack reportedly destroyed a number of fighter jets and warplanes that possibly were used for aerial strikes in Gaza and Lebanon. Israeli army carrying out secretive ground operations and offensive to destroy Hezbollah infrastructure, it says, even in Lebanon, close to the border. Military released footage of what it says were Israeli soldiers uncovering tunnels, weapons in at least villages and residential areas where Hezbollah infrastructure has been kept. But as a result, rockets flying over the Jordanian sky as Iran fired a salvo of ballistic missiles at Israel in retaliation to the charge and campaigns against Hezbollah. Alarms sounded, explosions could be heard even in Jerusalem and over the Jordan River Valley after Israelis piled and rushed to the bomb shelters. Rockets lit up the sky over Jerusalem on Tuesday after Iran fired a salvo of ballistic missiles. Israeli army radio said about 150 to 200 missiles had been launched. So remember, there are two different statements coming in right now. Israel says not much damage. Their dome system has been able to intercept most missiles and people have been saved, rushing them to the bomb shelters. But Iranian Revolutionary Guards has given out a statement saying there's been massive damage, especially to the military bases, air bases of Israel, where fighter jets are placed that are involved in aerial strikes from Lebanon to Gaza. Amid all of this, remember that, as you see on your screen, there's definitely been an all-out war that Iran has now officially joined in, declaring a war, jihad, over social media statements. Ali Khamenei has been moved to a safer location, but he continues to put out messages as well, while Israel says for what Iran has done now, it will have to pay. I want to now go across to our special guest joining me here in the afternoon, Herb Kiran, senior contributing editor of the Jerusalem Post. Now, Jerusalem Post has been, remember, over the past 1 year has been consistently updating on that. Herb, welcome to the show. First, tell me, what is the situation on the ground? What happened about 24 hours ago when the missiles came one by one and hit the ground?
Yeah, it was kind of a tense situation, right? I mean, the Israeli public was informed at about 7 o'clock that they should remain close to their shelters or go into the shelters. Most of the country went into the shelters, waited for the missiles to pass, and then got out of the shelters, right? I mean, it was extremely tense, but like you said in your report, I mean, the missile defense system successfully knocked most of them down. There was damage to property. There was one death. Ironically, it was a Palestinian who was killed in Jericho, and that was the result of 181 ballistic missiles coming into Israel.
Herb, what do you make of the status right now? Now, there have been earlier as well missiles and rockets coming toward Israel, but how do you witness this escalation? How do you think, as the world is watching, India watching, and USA has given out statements, but what does it look to you precisely? Do you think this is the biggest escalation till now?
Undeniably so, right? I mean, Israel will respond, like the Prime Minister said. Israel will respond. It can't tolerate a situation where Iran feels that whenever it wants, it can fire 181 ballistic missiles on the country. Even though no one was, or one person was killed, the intent was to kill thousands. So I think that Israel's response, and like I said, it will respond, will be equivalent to the intent rather than the result. Right? I mean, there will be some who will say out there, well, nobody was really killed, or only one person was killed.
Yes.
The result, the response should not be that heavy. But I think this time Israel is going to respond according to what they intended to do. They intended to cause enormous damage and kill thousands of people.
What do you think that happens here on with regard to Israel, in the sense that Iran is saying if you continue to use these airstrikes or go after Hezbollah in Lebanon, or if you do not stop what's unfolding in Gaza, then we will ensure that more missiles are coming your way. That clearly builds up a certain pressure on Israeli government too. So how do you think Israel has a plan of action to go ahead about this?
Look, I think that we've seen in Lebanon over the last 2 weeks that Israel has a real strong plan of action. Israel's been planning for Hezbollah in Lebanon now for 2 decades, or since the end of the Second Lebanon War in 2006. I imagine as well that there's a serious plan of action for Iran. This is something the country has been planning for as well for decades. And I think it's interesting to note the difference between what happened in Gaza on October 7th. In Gaza on October 7th, Israel wasn't prepared. They weren't looking at Hamas. They weren't looking at Gaza, but they have been looking at Hezbollah. They have been looking at Iran for decades, like I said. And I think we've seen the results over the last 2 weeks in Lebanon. And I think we will see similar results in Iran as well.
How do you think the world needs to respond? Many countries, including UAE and Saudi Arabia, have distanced itself right now. USA, while has expressed support, there are Western nations that have said this needs to de-escalate very fast. To the countries watching, the leaders watching, what do you think Israel wants to send out as a message right now?
Look, Israel's message is going to be less to the international community and more to its enemies in the region. And the message to the enemies in the region is, if you try to kill us, we're going to hit you back. Israel wants to survive in this region. It can't survive necessarily by de-escalating. It can only survive by reassuring its deterrence, which unfortunately the Iranians were not deterred. And I think that the response will be an attempt to regain that deterrence so that they don't fire rockets on Israel again.
How does, as a journalist, as a citizen of Israel, Herb, you look at the celebrations that have broken out in certain parts, whether it's Gaza, whether it's even in Iran or Bosnia? There are some places we see celebrations also pouring out. What do you say to that? Because they believe that it's against Israel's aggression.
You're right. Look, I mean, those celebrations don't really move me too much. I mean, it's no secret that Israel, the Jewish people, are hated by many around the world who will celebrate and would like to see our demise, our destruction. That's what the response will be in order to ensure that that doesn't happen. But on the other hand, I also say that there are good people out there who are not celebrating, who realize that Israel was attacked, and that any country, including India, when are attacked, they're not going to sit back and just let it happen, but rather they're going to go on the offensive and they're going to hit back so it doesn't happen again.
One final question, not as a journalist, but as an Israeli. Tell me, what is the mood among the people on the ground? It's not easy, clearly, living with constantly running to bomb shelters, missiles in the sky. What do you think is the sentiment among people? What are they saying? What is the top discussion like?
Look, I mean, it's interesting because, as you know, there's a lot of contentious arguments in Israel about many different issues. There's no contention about the need for Israel to hit back and to hit back hard, and that the only way that we will get out of this is if our enemies realize that they can't hit us. I mean, you have a left-wing Knesset member, Yair Golan, who's been talking about the need to go into southern Lebanon, right? This is something that unites the country because we all feel threatened by this, right? We're all in our shelters with our children and our grandchildren. It's something that goes across political lines, religious lines, Arabs, Jews. So there's a real understanding here that Israel needs to take action and it needs to take firm action. There's no disagreement about the need for Israel to fight both now in Lebanon to clear out Hezbollah so that the 60,000 Israelis who have been moved out of their homes can go back there, and to send a very firm message to Iran that they made a mistake.
All right, appreciate you joining us, Herb. Stay safe, thank you, and constantly for bringing reports in the Jerusalem Post that's constantly updating about perspective, situation on the ground, and a certain narrative that also Israel is bringing out to the world. Also joining me now from India Today's newsroom, my colleague Shiv Arur. Shiv, we've been listening to these different voices coming in from the ground, but here's what's more important. Israel's air bases, military bases on target, Mossad headquartered on target. In many ways, they decide how Israel goes ahead with this war. What are you picking up about about what's unfolding there in Israel and after specifically these ballistic missiles charge?
Very image that we had last night of those huge barrages of missiles flying into Israel made one thing very clear, that while some of those missiles were most definitely going to be intercepted by Israel's very advanced air defense systems, like David's Sling, Iron Dome and Arrow, there was always going to be the possibility that many of these missiles would ultimately land and impact on their targets. Now, three major targets that we saw being mentioned by Iran and actually confirmed on the ground in Israel are three principal Israeli Air Force bases. These are the Nevatim base, the Hatzerim base and the Tel Nof base, which are basically three Air Force bases that house most of the Israeli Air Force's combat aircraft strength, including F-35 stealth fighters, F-15 strike fighters and F-16 air defense fighters. So these are the very aircraft that have actually been conducting the airstrikes, both in Gaza, in Yemen and now in Lebanon. And therefore, for Iran to be able to hit those air bases with any degree of accuracy sends out not just a symbolic message, but a physical message. Remember, it's important to note that at this point of time, while Iran is talking about inflicting a great deal of damage at these air bases, there is no confirmation yet from the ground that aircraft have actually been damaged. The Israeli government has said that a few people have been injured, but no extensive damage has been reported. But we should leave room for the possibility that there is a fog of war right now. Sometimes information can change, as the reality emerges a little better once there is more information from these air bases. But like you said, the fact that Israel has now reserved the right to respond directly to Iran at a time and place of its choosing, and the United States stepping in and saying that they have an ironclad support for Israel, the possibility of this spilling out into a wider conflict is very, very real. The region is on tenterhooks right now. What can that escalation from Israel's side actually be? What will be the end game on that? Because remember, it's complicated. An attack on Iran at this time we'll have to keep eyes on what's happening in Lebanon as well. The Hezbollah has been conducting ambush raids. Our reporter on the ground, Ashraf, has been talking about ambushes of Israeli soldiers in southern Lebanon now that the ground offensive has started. So it has become complicated. Israel's main concern will be not to get bogged down in a ground war at this point of time. So much more information expected in the hours ahead.
Thank you very much for that perspective, and I'll come back to you in just a short while with more developments, constantly updates coming in. But we do have one confirmation, which is the confirmed missile that has hit the territory, the ground in Israel. Where did that happen? From the visuals, from the report surfacing, look at that. It does look like that it was near Mossad headquarters and near a school. Also, there have been some hits that have come in. Now, remember, there are military bases in the area. These are right on the outskirts of Tel Aviv. And there are these different bases that we can confirm to you where the strikes, the missiles that have been able to hit the ground. Now, there is, of course, the dome system that has been able to interrupt most of the missiles coming in, but there are reports surfacing that we do not know yet about the damage, but there's definitely been hit. But amid all of this, therefore, remember, the world is watching. When you talk about 100 to 200 ballistic, hypersonic missiles hitting another country, and with Iran openly declaring that it's happened, that means war. War that has been declared, announced by Iran, and they say they will go ahead with the jihad. The Revolutionary Guards of Iran had stated that the missile attack was in retaliation to the Hezbollah leader killing and that of the sort of aggression that Israel has shown. But amid all of this, Israel says this is self-defense. This is their moment to survive and tell Iran that all of this violence will not be accepted. Israeli Red Cross maintains that there hasn't been casualties because of missile attacks, though 2 people have received injuries because of the shrapnel, and that happened in Tel Aviv. So that's the latest coming in, and this is the aftermath, at least in some areas where the missiles did hit the ground. And remember, it was at a time when traffic was plying, but there were immediate sirens and alert messages that were sent to people to rush to bomb shelters. Now listen in now to one of the journalists. Emily Botpol is reporting from Tel Aviv.
אנחנו נמצאים במוכנות גבוהה בהגנה ובהתקפה. אנחנו נגן על אזרחי מדינת ישראל. יהיו לירי הזה השלכות. יש לנו תוכניות, אנחנו נפעל במקום ובזמן שנחליט. שוב אני אומר, אנחנו בפני מלחמה רב-זירתית, כבר מזה זמן רב, זה לא פעם ראשונה שיש ירי מאיראן. הירי הזה היה רחב יותר, בהיבט הטילים והמענה בהגנה נבנה בהתאם, וכמו שאנחנו רואים, מעט פגיעות ללא נפגעים בגלל ההתנהגות האחראית של הציבור וההקשבה להנחיות והפעלת מערכות ההגנה שלנו ופעילות גם של השותפים שלנו להגנה על אזרחי מדינת ישראל. אנחנו נמשיך להתנהל באופן הזה גם בהתקפה וגם בהגנה.
انتقام خون شهید مجاهد اسماعیل هنیه در تهران و نقض حاکمیت ملی جمهوری اسلامی ایران و همچنین شرارت‌های اخیر این رژیم جنایتکار در به شهادت رساندن فرماندهان و همچنین رهبر بزرگ حزب الله و مجاهد عظیم جناب سید حسن نصرالله و فرمانده رشید و شهید سپاه اسلام سردار سرلشکر پاسدار عباس نیلفروشان و همچنین در انتقام از خون کودکان مظلوم غزه و همچنین مردم مقاوم و مظلوم لبنان عملیات وعده صادق دو را.
What is the situation around you? Because till now it appeared that there were proxies of Iran, but Iran directly firing missiles. Tell us about the mood. What happened when you heard the sirens, when people were rushing to the bunkers?
Now, thank you. Obviously, let's go over the fact that this is the second direct attack on Israel from Iran. The first attack happened on April 13, April 14, on a Saturday night. Now, as it happened in April, we were informed that an attack was being prepared slightly before. We had information that we were going to be sent to bomb shelters. Passers-by on the street had enough time to go home and stay near bomb shelter as per notified by IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari. Now, in April, when Israel was attacked by Iran in a similar direct attack, one victim, Bedouin Arab girl, was badly wounded by the interception. So far, we have no reports of any injuries as it stands. And as you can see behind me, life is coming back to Tel Aviv. Those are still the early hours of the morning, but we were expecting such an attack, and it was majoritarily thwarted by Israel's air defense and a coalition led by the United States. The attack was majorly and majoritarily condemned on the international scene. We are expecting a response. Yesterday, the Israeli cabinet convened to decide how and when they will respond. It remains unclear as it is, but there are still developments. There are still developments in the north right now. We are still getting rocket sirens over northern Israel, and we know that the IDF is responding to this aggression as we speak.
Yes.
We will know more throughout the day.
So remember, when we talk about more than 100 ballistic missiles at least means possibly to cause extensive damage, and yet we did not see the casualties in Israel. That's one of the reasons is the Iron Dome system, extremely sophisticated, that Israel has had now for several decades. This is an area defense, and this is designed to intercept about short-range rockets that intercepts artillery shells and that otherwise can endanger populated areas. But even while these missiles are coming in, to be able to track it, and look how Israel has been able to develop this system. The battery capabilities, with each battery a combination of missile launcher, it has a control station, radar that can defend up to 150 square kilometers according to our information, and about the size of a medium-sized city in total when this system is. And that is the reason when, even though constantly these missiles were coming in and hitting Israeli territory, most of it was stopped midway because of this dome system. We have some big news coming in. Let's... It's not looking good. Explosions have been heard in the area where the Israeli embassy is located in Copenhagen, while no casualties have come in. The Danish police has announced that they opened a probe after 2 explosions were heard near Israeli embassy in Copenhagen, according to local police. No casualties have been confirmed. This is Denmark, remember, that we are talking about. Does this mean that Israeli embassy in other countries as well will have to have heightened security now? What kind of explosions were heard near the Israeli embassy, and was it a direct threat? Was it an accidental case? What happened? But amid the war that's clearly been announced by Iran, and with the Israeli embassies in other countries, we can see in Copenhagen that there have been definitely heightened security that can be seen. So the Danish police has said that 2 explosions were definitely heard near the premises of Israeli embassy. No casualties though. But what happened, what is the timeline scenario of it? We'll look at that, because remember, right now, amid the ongoing war situation, other countries will also be looking at where the Israeli embassies have been located and if they can also be on the target. But it's not just about Iran and Israel. Remember, it's not even just a regional conflict. The world is watching right now, and possibly what happens in the days to come. Look at the images on your screen. The world leaders have reacted, while Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded with a stern warning, saying Iran made a grave mistake by attacking the nation and that there would be severe consequences. But on the other side, Iran's supreme leader, as they call him, Ali Khamenei, who has been moved to a secure location, has also warned that these missile attacks will grow stronger, more intense, if Israel does not stop its aggression in Gaza and in Lebanon, specifically against Hezbollah. Now, the USA has responded too. USA has condemned Iran's actions, reaffirming support to Israel, promising to defend its allies, and calling it a self-defense that Israel is doing. Global leaders like the UK, France, Australia have also meanwhile expressed concern. United Nations has been putting out statements to say that there has to be a resolution to prevent further escalation.
איראן עשתה הערב טעות גדולה, והיא תשלם על כך. המשטר באיראן לא מבין את נחישותנו להגן על עצמנו ואת נחישותנו לגמול לאויבינו. סינואר ודף לא הבינו זאת, נסראללה ומוחסן לא הבינו זאת, וכנראה יש בטהרן אלה שלא מבינים זאת. הם יבינו. נעמוד בכלל שקבענו. מי שתוקף אותנו, אנחנו תוקפים אותו.
I think it would be right to start off with October 7th. We regard October 7th as a terrorist attack. We understand that Israel had a need to respond. But we also believe that any response by any country has to take into account international humanitarian law, that it must be careful about any damage or any implications for civilian populations. And that given what has happened in Gaza, it is important to have some kind of international humanitarian effort out there. And we are very much concerned at the possibility of a broadening of the conflict, not just what happened in Lebanon, but also, I referred earlier to the Houthis and the Red Sea. And, to some extent, anything that happens between Iran and Israel. So, again, it's one thing to be concerned. I'm sure you can say that for a lot of countries. If, as part of that concern, you can end up doing something about it, again, don't underestimate the importance of communication in difficult times. If there are things to be said and passed on and passed back, I think those are all contributions that we can make, and we do.
I wanted to say a few words about Iran's missile attack on Israel today. At my direction, the United States military actively supported the defense of Israel, and we're still assessing the impact. But based on what we know now, the attack appears to have been defeated and ineffective. And this is testament to Israeli military capability and the U.S. military. It's also a testament to intensive planning between the United States and Israel to anticipate and defend against the brazen attack we expected. Make no mistake, the United States is fully supportive of Israel. And I've been spent the morning and part of the afternoon in the Situation Room, and meeting with my whole national security team and consulting with the Israelis indirectly because, in terms of their impact on us.
Today, Iran launched approximately 200 ballistic missiles at Israel in a reckless and brazen attack. I condemn this attack unequivocally. I'm clear-eyed. Iran is a destabilizing, dangerous force in the Middle East, and today's attack on Israel only further demonstrates that fact. I fully support President Biden's order for the U.S. military to shoot down Iranian missiles targeting Israel, just as we did in April. And let us be clear, Iran is not only a threat to Israel, Iran is also a threat to American personnel in the region, American interests, and innocent civilians across the region who suffer at the hands of Iran-based and backed terrorist proxies. We will never hesitate to take whatever action is necessary to defend U.S. forces and interests against Iran and Iran-backed terrorists. And we will continue to work with our allies and partners to disrupt Iran's aggressive behavior and hold them accountable.
Iran, for the second time in the space of 5 months, launched a direct attack on Israel, including some 200 ballistic missiles. This is totally unacceptable, and the entire world should condemn it. Initial reports suggest that Israel, with the active support of the United States and other partners, effectively defeated this attack. We have demonstrated once again our commitment to Israel's defense. We'll remain in very close touch with Israel and other partners in the region in the hours and days ahead.
Iran had no money when I was in charge. They had a lot of money when I started. They had no money when I finished. And now they have $300 billion and another $300 billion from their wholly owned subsidiary, Iraq. You know, Iraq has more oil than almost anybody. It's like massive. But they didn't keep the oil. And they have hundreds of billions of dollars right now. Under my administration, we had no war in the Middle East. We had no war in Europe. We had harmony in Asia. We had no inflation. We had no Afghanistan catastrophe. Instead, we had peace, peace, peace. We had a lot of peace.
So remember, whether there are rockets and missiles from the sky or gunmen on the ground, there is situation tense in Israel right now, but Israel says Iran will have to pay for what it has done, and that is the mistake of targeting Israel. Iran is defiant, and so is Israel. Amid all of this, we are trying to get you voices from the ground, and specifically those who can give us an expert perspective about what is really unfolding, what possibly is the next plan. Melissa Weiss is joining me. She's a senior journalist with the Jewish Insider from Tel Aviv. Melissa, welcome to the show. I've been reading some of your columns and reports as well on social media, that statements that you put out. Tell me right now, what is the mood like? It's going to be a year of 7th October. With the latest escalated attacks, what is it, the sentiment that you're bringing to us? What happened in the past 24 hours?
Sure. The past 24 hours have really been unprecedented in modern Israeli history. We have not ever seen a barrage of the kind that we saw last night. It was brief. It lasted about an hour that Israelis were in their bomb shelters across the country, but it marked such a severe escalation that Israel will have to respond to the roughly 180 ballistic missiles that Iran fired last night. Now, luckily, there were no Israeli fatalities. One Palestinian man in the West Bank was killed by a ballistic missile that struck him. And there are some injuries that have been reported. But honestly, we are hours away from the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. And
yes.
That, you know, it's almost taken a back seat considering everything that has happened this week with Iran and everything that will come next week with the October 7th anniversary. But one thing that has been very noticeable to us here who've been following Hebrew media and paying close watch to what the IDF is saying, there has been a noticeable shift, a mentality shift, and not just among the Israeli people, but you see it in Israeli officials. You saw last Friday, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, the IDF spokesperson, gave an address describing the attack on the Hezbollah stronghold in southern Beirut that ultimately killed Hassan Nasrallah. And as I was watching it, I was with a group of journalists. We were watching it together, and it was noticeable, the shift in Daniel Hagari's mentality, in his framing,
What
in
is
his
that shift?
tone.
Melissa, tell us about that.
Whereas much of this year he has been somber. It has been said we have felt like we are playing defense. There has been a shift in Israel, and now the mindset is that Israel is going on offense. They were prepared for this war with Hezbollah in a way that they were not prepared to take on Hamas after October 7th last year. And you saw that play out in a number of ways: the walkie-talkie attack, the pager attack, the killing of Hassan Nasrallah, the very targeted strikes that have taken out a number of Hezbollah's senior leaders over the last 2 months. All of these things have been in the works for the last 18 years since Israel and Hezbollah engaged in the Second Lebanon War in 2006. Israel has prepared for this day with Hezbollah, less so with Hamas.
Why do you say that, Melissa? Can you explain that? Because there are these Western nations that are saying that there has to be de-escalation. United Nations is saying it. Iran says if Israel continues, specifically for targeting Hezbollah in Lebanon or with the ground up in Gaza, that there is going to be stronger, sharper missiles being thrown at you. Do you then think Israel is in no mood to take a step back, and why?
I mean, we have now seen twice in 6 months that Iran has threatened widespread destruction against Israel in the form of missile attacks. Both of those times they have come up short. I think it is fair to say that, as in April, what happened last night was not an Iranian success. And, it remains to be seen if Iran really does have the capabilities to carry out the destruction it constantly vows. It has been content to let its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, carry out its dirty work for the last year without ever really getting involved. And really, Hezbollah was always there kind of as a guard for Iran. The idea that Hezbollah had upwards of 100,000 missiles poised, ready to strike Israel. While now we see assessments from both the U.S. and Israel that their stockpile has been depleted by at least 50%. And Iran had always relied upon Hezbollah, which was the strongest of its proxies, to take on Israel in the event of a major confrontation. So is this bluster? It's hard to say, but at this point, Iran has not showed that it has the capabilities to do the kind of damage to Israel that it has constantly vowed to do.
Melissa, I do have a question, because this has been a polarizing debate, whether on social media, whether in world politics, for over 1 year now. If the world's listening to you, whether it's in India or people across the world, what is your message as an Israeli journalist to the world about which way should it go? Because there is support for Iran, there is support for Israel, and there are countries that have completely distanced itself from the war. What do you think the world needs to do at this moment?
I mean, as a journalist, I'm not here to pick sides, but if I am on any side, it is on the side of humanity. And I think that indiscriminately firing ballistic missiles, hundreds of them, across a population of 10 million people, Arabs, Jews, Muslims, Christians, Baha'i, it's hard to say that Iran is on the side of humanity in such a situation.
All right, and Melissa, one final question I do have, because when you have over 100 missiles coming toward your territory, what is it, how did it happen that, thankfully, that there was not an extensive people damage or human loss that we saw? So can you just tell us about that moment? You must have had barely a few minutes for the people to rush to shelter. So what was the system like that Israel managed to save its people?
Sure. Well, so we started hearing indications about 4 p.m. local time that something was going to happen. Iran had communicated through its intermediaries to the U.S. that it was preparing a ballistic missile strike. And from there, things moved very quickly. Within a couple of hours, the Home Front Command in Israel had issued guidelines, which anyone with a cell phone in Israel will receive, instructing us to stay near a shelter. Close to 6:30 last night, 7:30 last night local time, those instructions changed, and we were instructed to go into a bomb shelter immediately. And remember, it is now standard procedure when building new buildings in Israel that they be equipped with bomb shelters. That's something that only happened in recent years with the rise of Hamas and the firing of their weapons constantly into Israeli population centers. So many homes are already equipped with in-unit bomb shelters. Older buildings will have underground facilities. For example, my building is a newer building.
It's incredible as you describe it to us, Melissa,
so
because this shouldn't be a normal, but it looks like for people in Israel, possibly in other parts of Middle East, that it is becoming increasingly normal to have these safe houses. And may everyone, whether in Israel or in the region, be safe, and may peace return to the region very soon. Melissa Weiss, thank you so much for speaking to India Today Television. And I'll come back to you in some time to get some ground updates on that as well. We have more news coming in. Let's take a look at that. Right, big news coming in. Iranian Ministry of Intelligence has issued a threat in the Hebrew language, basically referring, and so that it can be understandable to the people of Israel, according to which, this is the Iranian Ministry of Intelligence issuing a statement and has said it will soon eliminate the heads of the security establishment in Israel and the Prime Minister. This is as direct as it can get. This is an elected government of Israel that is on the target now of Iranian Ministry of Intelligence. And they have released this statement in Hebrew language, which is of course commonly spoken in Israel, to send out a message. Let's go across now to understand what is happening in the region. Joining me live, and India Today is on the ground. We are not depending on secondary sources and perspective. India Today's Ashraf Wani is in Beirut, in Lebanon, and he's at a very crucial location right now. Ashraf, one by one, definitely you can see the tensions emerging. What do you see around you?
First of all, we want to show to the whole world the first pictures of the Hezbollah headquarters. And I will brief meanwhile that first time after 8 days, the media was allowed to visit the site of Hezbollah headquarters, which was blasted by the IDF on Friday. Now today is the Wednesday, but you can see still the smoke of the bombs coming out from this site, which is the world exclusive pictures coming here on India Today, and you can see still the smoke coming out. It is the 8th day, and after the hard work and hard efforts of different rescue teams, body of the Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was retrieved after 3 days, and now this has just been kept here as a symbol. They did not want to touch it, and you can see still some of the mourners because this area is very volatile. You can see the buildings impact, what has happened to all these buildings here, and as I said, the smoke still coming out from the underground floors of this building, which was 6th floor on the top and 2 floors underground, where Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was carrying out a meeting at that moment on Friday, when more than 2,000-pound bomb was dropped on this headquarters of Hezbollah, which completely brought it on the ground and raised it. You can see the impact of that blast in the surrounding buildings. See, all has and now you can see here how much crowd of journalists across the world, almost all 1,000 journalists today, first time visited this area.
This is the first-hand account, yes, that you're bringing to us, and shows the damage that's basically happened of the Hezbollah headquarters there in Lebanon, in Beirut. Stay safe.